help for your food addiction and you don't know where to start? Welcome to the series, The Food Addiction Frontlines, where we uncover the expertise and services available for overcoming food addiction. I'm Dr. Vera Tarman, an addiction physician specializing in sugar and ultra-processed food addiction, here to introduce you to the professionals making a difference in this field. In each episode, we'll meet leading experts that share their journey, their training, and unique services that they provide for all who struggle with food addiction. So let's help you find the best treatment for yourself. Welcome, Brenda Wollenberg.
Thank you, Vera. So good to chat with you again.
Tell us what inspired you to specialize in the field of food addictions, amongst your other focuses.
Like many healthcare practitioners, it started out of our own lack of health or wellness. And I would say specializing in this field as one of, like you said, several that I do, has to do with 2020 hindsight vision. When you look back, for me, my mid-20s, how addicted I had been to sugar and ultra-processed foods and not even aware that was what was going on. I worked with a really good healthcare practitioner. He got me completely turned around. I don't think we ever said the word food addiction or sugar addiction, but that is exactly what he did, was walked me out of that through a dietary approach, through different lifestyle principles, so even different mindset. So now, as first a social worker and then a nutritionist, it's like combining those. I see a lot of people in my practice who are addicted to ultra processed foods. This saved my life. I need to be able to do this with other people as well.
What are your credentials? You mentioned social work, you mentioned nutrition. I know you do the DNA work.
I started off with a bachelor's in social work from Calgary. I studied and worked in that field for about 10 years, mostly working family and children's services. So a lot of work with kids, adolescents, families, and I loved it. Then when our kids were coming along, we made the decision, my husband and I, that one of us should stay home, and I was the logical choice for that because I wanted to breastfeed kids for a long time, and that wasn't a capability of his. I homestayed with kids, did some social work on the side. When our youngest hit kindergarten, I said, I got to combine these fields that I'm interested in. So I went back and became a holistic nutritionist at that point. You mentioned the work with genetics. That has been additional training in about the last 6 years. That's only recently become available. So I've been doing lots of workshops, courses, and reading on that in the last 5 or 6 years.
That's actually how I got to know you, was this ability to look at the genetic genotypes or phenotypes and determine why it is that some people can eat some foods and others can't eat foods. What kind of services are you providing for the food addiction community?
I do standard one-to-one consulting where you have intake forms, what's called a metabolic typing survey. It's a simple survey that clients do, so I at least know their body type. Would they be better on higher percentages of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, that kind of thing? I have done that for 20 plus years of being a nutritionist, but in the last few years, specialized in this epigenetic field. For that, I have a couple of programs, either a one-on-one, it's called a Nourish Your DNA review, which we run your genetics through either 23andMe or different types of programs through some software that I'm trained in evaluating. And we get together and look at a number of different genes and discuss how they impact everything from your metabolism to potential addictions, neurotransmitters, detoxification, inflammation. That's also expanded into a 12-week program that I run with a fellow nutritionist who's also a PhD scientist, which is really helpful in the whole genetic realm. So yeah, either one-on-one, hour-and-a-half consult type of thing, or 12-week programs that really specialize in the genetics.
If I were to ask you what is unique about your program, would I be correct in saying that you are a genetically informed nutritionist?
That's it. I've not ever called myself that, but yes, that would be what it is. The other unique component is the social work piece, the understanding of contributing factors, childhood trauma, external stressors that would be contributing to the genetic propensity, perhaps, to an addiction.
So you offer this one-on-one consultation, and you offer this 12-week, I guess it's like
it's a deep dive, Vera. We cover about 67 different genes. We look at a whole number of categories, like I mentioned, metabolism, the macronutrients, how many carbs should you be eating and what form, proteins, fats. We also look at, like I mentioned, the neurotransmitters. How do you deal with short-term and long-term stressors? What's going on with your inflammation? People don't realize the massive role that inflammation plays in both physical health, but also mental health. If you have brain inflammation, it's very hard for your transmitters to be doing the job they're supposed to be doing. We cover a different section of the body each week, give you some very personalized menu and recipe plans to work with, help you figure out exactly how you should be moving, exercise. We look at longevity, like what can you be doing to live a long and healthy life. So yeah, big deep dive in that.
Yeah, and it would really help a person understand why they may not be able to thrive on a keto diet where somebody else could.
Exactly. Biggest reason, Alicia, that's my business partner in this, and I do this, is to see people start to lift shame off themselves. They just go, oh, so I actually have a snacking gene. They really understand dopamine and the role that it plays. For example, food addiction or thrill seeking or compulsive online shopping. It's not that they don't want to change those behaviors, but they no longer feel that it's simply a matter of lack of willpower, or they just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they should be doing this better. No, you actually have a deficiency in the production of this neurotransmitter or this enzyme. We give you some foundational shifts in how you eat, move, sleep, supplement, and see if we can't bring some correction to those. Genes don't change, but oh my goodness, do we have a lot of control? We can do things about how those genes are going to express themselves. And
what you're suggesting is quite novel. Give an example. Somebody walks in with a binge eating disorder. What would you do and how would you work them? And what is the end result?
I'm thinking of a particular client that I actually worked with for a lot of years and had lots of help before I understood about genetics. But they chose to do the genetics done and do the course to deal with some things that we couldn't quite get a handle on. There was still some binge eating. There was still periods of abstinence and then just the whole cycle. What we discovered was that we had thought that they needed more protein all along, which they did a little bit more, but it was largely a saturated fat issue that they needed to, believe it or not, increase. Okay. I know saturated fat gets a huge bad rap,
Yeah.
but in this instance, this client needed to be eating 40 to 50 grams a day, which is a significant amount. So that was a huge shift. And then the other shift was to see the neurotransmitters and just the two things with dopamine. First, you have to produce enough of it. Secondly, you have to produce enough receptors because they lock and key like this. In this case, neither of those were happening. There wasn't enough dopamine and there wasn't enough receptors. And this person had a very, what's called a COMT, a gene that very easily degrades the dopamine. So you're not making enough, you don't have a lot of receptors, and you've got a very fast clearance mechanism. It was like this person just went, oh my goodness. So it's not I'm spiritually inept or I'm morally deficient or whatever. We then added in some supplements to reset the cortisol cycle. So it really helped them be more at peace and gave them a very concrete strategy. They are living much more healthily, able to manage their food choices much better.
When we work with food addiction, once the food is out of the way, the drug food to manage our emotions, what do you do with all that stuff that's left behind, the craziness that we lived with?
I came up with this acronym a little bit ago called OCC, basically observation, curiosity, and compassion. So we walk a lot through taking a step back, like a third party observer, and go, okay, what behavior am I doing? Just what is it? And then get curious. What might have triggered this? What we look at safe shelters and slippery slope. What kind of things happened today that were slippery and I just didn't recognize them, or I had the option to choose a safe mechanism and I didn't choose that. No judgment. We're simply being curious about what goes on with that. The second C is compassion, because the reality is that people do things that make sense to them. Now, it just might be based on childhood trauma. It might be based on an incident that happened, might be learned patterns of behavior for protection. The big next step is deciding, does this particular pattern still serve me? Is it in my best interest? And then we'll go through dialoguing about some other options. That's all a part of either the one-on-one, and we touch on that in each session in one form or other as we're going through the coursework. So yeah, it's this is what your genes are, this is what you should do. And then it's emotionally, why do you have more or less trouble being able to follow through on the things that have now been shown to be effective for you? So,
Do you ever refer people out if it seems like it's larger than what you can handle?
absolutely. I just did that recently. Someone said, "You're trained in social work. Will you actually counsel me as a
Yeah.
social worker?" And I said, "No, I'm still licensed. I'm still covered for insurance for that, but I would far rather you go and see someone that specializes in that."
Yeah, so that kind of leads to the next question, which is what would you say are your limitations in what you offer or challenges?
So I think that is a limitation that I've chosen to set.
Yeah.
There are some amazing addiction counselors, amazing social workers, therapists. That is what they've chosen to specialize. I've chosen to specialize in epigenetics, and there's not very many people like that.
Yeah.
So let's let other really skilled workers tackle this aspect of this, and I'll stick with this. I would say the other limitation I find is that because it's such a new field, epigenetics was only, or the human genome was only mapped 20 years ago. So I will get clients to say, my doctor says that this is just a bunch of hooey, or my doctor will say that diet has nothing to do with my son's ADHD, for example. Some of this just hair pulling out. That's just when you're a little cutting edge, probably the most I've ever been, it's blazing a bit of a trail. We have some situations now with people that are on different forms of medication for mental health reasons. We send them back to their psychiatrist with their full 65-page document. And
Yeah.
we've had some psychiatrists that have just been so positive and responding on that and saying, oh my goodness, we actually need to switch your medications, or we need to reduce them based on the other things that you are doing to support, say, dopamine production. So it's whenever we can get a practitioner who will partner, oh my goodness, that's ideal.
What do you do in terms of support? We all know in the food addiction world that support is crucial.
As a regular part of our 12-week program, we start with a mindfulness exercise of some sort. And they often include being grateful for the family members or friends that have freed up the time and enabled the resources, whatever, to us to be able to be in this course. When I do one-on-ones with people, I will often suggest that they invite a partner with them to come to that. It's a lot of information,
Uh,
and having someone there that understands a little bit more about the place they're in is super helpful.
You are a food addict in recovery. What do you do to stay grounded? This is a tough field to be working in. We're in the
Mhm.
front lines.
I do all the things that I try to tell my clients would be helpful to do. I am someone who starts their day with a really short meditative read, some quietness. I try to spend some time outside right away with full sun on my face to help my circadian rhythm stay focused and help me sleep well at night. I eat really well. My full-blown addiction was, oh my goodness, 40, this is going to date me, Vera, 40 years ago. I have evolved through genetic impact to be someone who actually can have the odd, sometimes food. It doesn't trigger me. I don't get binged. I know what I'm doing with them. That has been an interesting journey. It doesn't happen for everyone. It really depends upon a lot upon genetics, but it means I need to eat well, like 98% of the time, exactly what is fuels me, get my sleep, manage my stress. And so pretty much every tool that I write about in my books or teach in the courses, I actually do them.
That's great. If people want to find out more about you, let us know.
Sure. So the website is LM. The LM stands for Lifestyle Management. So inbalancelm.com. And on there, right at the top, you can click for a free 20-minute wellness roadmap call. Just that I have to ask you some questions about where you currently are, where you want to go, if I might be a fit to help you with that. So that's always a resource that's offered. Also on there, if you click the little button, it tells you more about epigenetic work. or about the different kinds of courses that we offer. They're all on there. And my fees are basically, it's a US based site, $100, 100 Canadian for per hour, but all the pricing of the programs are there. And for our Canadian listeners, I'm not trying to rip you off having it in US dollars. I actually took the Canadian pricing and converted it to US. So you're getting what would be the price in Canadian as well.
Thank you. The last words that you'd like to leave the listener.
There is more that we can do than we even know. And it just is because we don't have that piece to the puzzle yet. So just remain hopeful no matter what's going on. There is likely something else that can be done that might just be that piece that gels it all, and you can move forward with a little more ease.
Thank you, Brenda Wollenberg, for letting us know a little bit about you.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me, Vera.
Sugar is the enemy, corrupting the minds of the teens, expelling you not to foresee. Your body's your temple, your mind is your key to a life tapped into happiness. Have it, don't dream it. If only you could see it.